All right, so this is lesson 10 of Loving God with All Your Mind, How to Defend Your Faith. And this lesson I entitled Lizards, Rain, and Geysers, Oh My. Lions and tigers. And all right, but no one got back with me, and so this is that lesson where I was wondering, so I just went with what I kind of thought would be a good topic to discuss, because dinosaurs and Noah's Ark are kind of things that people like to have in contention with the Bible. So just like I said, there are two areas that frequently come under attack in the Christian worldview. One of those is dinosaurs in the Bible. How do they fit in? Where do dinosaurs in the Bible, how do those things mesh? The other is Noah's flood. And really, it's God's flood, right? Just Noah was saved out of God's flood. But the question is, are the worldwide flood events described in Genesis possible? Is it possible? Is it consistent with what we see, what we know from science? So our job in all of this, go back to our very first lesson, kind of our theme for apologetics, 1 Peter 3:15 says, "But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence." So that's what we want to pursue. We want to be able to give a good defense of what we believe, but do it with gentleness and reverence. So dinosaurs, did they even exist? I've heard some people say that, well, it's just a joke, that it's just that they didn't exist. That's stretching it, I think. So, and let me just give you a disclaimer. Some of this material is borrowed heavily from Ken Ham's stuff. So in fact, I meant to give you the web addresses, but you can go out and Google answers in Genesis, and you'll see some of these things verbatim. But while I read, as long as I give you that disclaimer, I feel comfortable plagiarizing this stuff. So dinosaurs, did they exist? And dinosaurs certainly did roam the earth in the ancient past. Fossils of dinosaurs have been found all over the world, and their bones are displayed in museums for all to see. Scientists have been able to reconstruct many of their skeletons, so we know much about how they may have looked. We don't really know a lot of stuff about their soft tissues, because those go away, but like their skin and organs and stuff. So we can guess what they look like. And there's actually a swing in the scientific world now that may be more avian-like than reptilian-like, but we know that something existed that had that skeletal structure. So just a little background: dinosaurs. How were they discovered? The story of their discovery began back in the 1820s when Gideon Mantell, an English doctor, found some unusual teeth. I remember what we were saying this morning where I was raised. And I was raised in Arkansas, so you can say teeth. Unusual teeth and bones in a quarry. Dr. Mantell realized there was something very different about these animal remains and believed that he had found an entirely new group of reptiles. By 1841, about 9 types of these different reptiles had been uncovered, including 2 called Megalosaurus and Iguanodon. At this time, a famous British scientist and creationist, Dr. Richard Owen, coined the name Dinosauria, meaning terrible lizard, for this is what the huge bones made him think of. So it's only been recently that we've had really a scientific knowledge of dinosaurs, relatively recently, within the past 150, 200 years. So what's all the big fuss? What makes dinosaurs so special? Well, there's really kind of 2 things. Unlike most reptiles, dinosaurs walked upright. Now, not upright like you and I walk, but like a cow or like a deer or horse walks upright, not slithering like a lizard or an alligator. So you see a cow there, how they stand up on that picture, and you see how the alligator's legs are kind of out to the side, and they just, if you've ever seen them, they kind of have a canny walk. Also, some dinosaurs were very large, although most of them were about the size of a chicken or a sheep. So in comparison, somewhere in that dog, sheep, small horse range was the majority of them. Most of them weren't the big T-Rexes or Brontosauruses, although those did exist. So dinosaurs, when did they live? When did they live? The going answer these days is 65 to 205 million years ago. That's give or take a week. So we don't have it that precise. That's a long time ago. It's very old. Like this is Rip Van Winkle, supposedly. So how do we know? How do the scientists know that they lived somewhere between 65 million years ago and 205 million years ago? Well, there's a very interesting phenomenon that if you get a fossil bone very, 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 very clean, you can look at it. So here's a fossil. You may not be able to see, but there's actually an imprint. And if we do a close-up of this, you can say it actually says 143 million BC. So that's how they know. They're all tagged like that, right? What's that? Right, they put it in English for us too, so that's good. And BC, even though that wasn't around 143 million years ago. Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. So imprints, there are no imprints there. So how do scientists know when the fossils were put in the ground? Well, they look to strata or layer identification. Okay? So what they do is they look in these layers and they see layers and they go down the earth. Well, this is 5 million years ago, 10 million years ago, 100 million years ago. And it just happens that all the dinosaurs fall in this 65 million to 205 million year layer called the Mesozoic. Is that right? I put our biology teacher on the spot, sorry. I think it's Mesozoic era. There's a problem with that, though. There's a problem with dating it like that. And remember, I have in our notes begging the questions. Everyone remember what begging the question was, a faulty argument? It's circular reasoning, where you kind of assume your proof. So this is how it would go. If you're a scientist and you see this layer and you find a dinosaur bone in there, you go, oh, this must be the Mesozoic era because that's when dinosaurs exist, right? And then they say, well, how do I know that dinosaurs existed in the Mesozoic layer? Well, it's in this layer of the Mesozoic layer, right? So they're assuming what they believe, right? Do you understand how they're... And in fact, Ken Ham gives an example of where they find some prints that they think are dinosaur prints, and they say, oh, this layer is Mesozoic era. And then they come back and analyze it, and they find out they're not dinosaur imprints or some other mammal imprints. Well, then what do they do with that layer? They give it a new time frame, right? They're just dating on what their narrative tells them to date. So if it took millions of years, then that layer has to be that old. Does that make sense? Everyone follow how the scientist's brain's working? We know this is the Mesozoic area because dinosaurs were in it. We know dinosaurs were in the Mesozoic layer because this is the Mesozoic layer. It's just going around and around. A more reasonable answer, there's Adam and Eve and there's Bronto in the background, is a more reasonable answer is that the dinosaurs and Adam and Eve coexisted, right? That the Bible is true. God created all that we see somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago, and the dinosaurs coexisted with Adam and Eve. That's a more reasonable explanation. So that does leave us a question. We see these dinosaur bones,